Hello and welcome to another lesson on sound isolation and room acoustics. Today I'm excited to show you guys one of my favorite designs. It's up there with one of my favorite designs because we took a very small studio that is so small that it did not need to be permitted, and we got everything we needed in that studio in a beautiful, concise design. And I know that if you are on this journey of trying to build your own home recording studio, especially if it's going to be in your backyard, then this video, this lesson is for you. Before we dive in, I want to always let you know that there is a free resource for you if you're going down this journey. It is my free soundproofing workshop. It is 30 minutes of guided in-depth teaching going over 3 different types of builds, both in a basement, a garage, and in a backyard. So you know exactly how to build your own studio and see everything that I do on my professional design firm so that we get great studios all over the world. All right, my name is Wilson Harwood. I am a studio designer and acoustician based in Nashville, and let's dive in to this lesson on how we designed a studio within the limitations of not needing a permit. All right, here we go. All right, so here it is. The outside here, there's some stray baffle boxes, so don't worry about that. And a little trap door for the ERV back here. And I just really like the simplicity of this design. And so I really want to show you guys sort of how this whole thing came together, because there's a lot that goes into any studio. And this one especially captures it all. It has a window, it has a door, it has an electrical panel, it has HVAC, it has the ERV and ventilation right here. And so we managed to pack a big punch in a very small little space. Just so you get an idea, the footprint of this is, let's see here, I think it's about 11 feet wide. And then I think it's 10 feet deep. Yeah, 10 feet by 11. And then we also, I know for the permit limitations, this point to the actual earth is 12 feet. So really kind of a unique design. And we did the shed roof design, which I always like. It keeps things simple when you're dealing with a smaller space like this. So let's start with the base floor. To code, this needed to be 6 inches above the ground. So we have that above the flooring height, and in this case, the ground has been moved. So let's actually move this back up so it makes more sense there. And that is required for code, so unfortunately we lose a little bit of height there. And then we have our wall system. So let's take a look at this. We're going to take out our roof, and we'll get into all this in a bit. We're going to take out the ceiling, and the baffle boxes are there and everything. So there's a lot going on. But with this design, we just did a 2x4 wall, and we used the hush frame rafts on the inside. And you know, I'm actually making a video after this one about why I'm moving away from hush frame rafts. But in this certain circumstance, it was really helpful for such a small space, because what we can do is, let me show you real quick how we did this here. We can actually take off, let me take off the north wall since we're looking at that, and you can kind of see how I organize everything here. It's a bit crazy. So we've got our, nope, that's the outside layers, 5/8 inch drywall and 23/32 OSB. And we'll take out the insulation because it'll be a little easier. So these hush frame rafts are the only product on the market where you can get an extremely, extremely tight 1/4 of an inch gap. So as you can see here in this section, we don't want the 2x4, or this is a 1x3 furring channel right here, to touch the bottom here. And we definitely don't want it to touch the outside wall, which this is very subtle, but you can see here there's actually a little gap right there. And so what this does is it allows us to put our sheetboard layers, our drywall, and in this case our OSB layers on the inside, directly attached to the 1x3 without losing more than 1/4 of an inch off the actual stud wall that would have been there. So it's a great time saving technique for this. So I highly recommend it. It's awesome. And definitely really, really helpful if you want to save space. Now, the downside to that is that you actually will end up getting a smaller air gap, which then decreases isolation. So it's always this give and take that happens with sound isolation. So now let's take a look at our wall design from the perspective of what layers of siding we put on this, because people ask me this all the time. So I always start my studio designs now with OSB. So I do a 23-30 seconds OSB layer on the inside. The reason for that is it just makes putting the second layer of drywall that much easier. You don't have to line up your screws with the furring channel. And it also makes it so you can easily hang acoustic panels, guitars, things like that on the wall without having to, put drywall anchors and things like that. So we just do it. We do it on the ceilings. We do it on the walls now. It's just kind of our mandatory thing. And then for the outside of the wall, I want the equal amount of mass on the outside. So I do 2 layers of 23-30 seconds OSB sheathing on the outside instead of the usual 1 layer. And this is going to give us plenty of mass. And then we can have whatever siding that the client wants on the outside. The siding is, I always say, a bonus. The only way I would change this design is if we were going to do something really heavy like a concrete siding, like a hardy board or something like that. That can actually get us to that roughly 2 pound to 2.2 pounds per square foot that I'm looking for per layer of sheet board on my walls. So that's all the walls. They're all like that. And, we have this cool elevation here. You'll notice that the top of my walls have baccarat and acoustic sealant, which is right here. And then we also do that at the floor layer, which is hidden from the floor currently right now. But the reason for that is that we want the ceiling to come in right above that. So I'm actually going to put my ceiling on, and we'll talk about the ceiling in a second here. But you can see that the ceiling and the drywall wall layers, and OSB layers for that matter, don't touch. We leave a 1/4 inch gap, and we fill that with baccarat and acoustic sealant so that it's airtight, but we don't get vibration transfer from one to the other. So that's the important part there. Now, with this ceiling, what we have is we actually have what I'm using now, which is the Genie Clip RST. It's very similar to the RSIC-1 clips that you might see on the market. I think they're about the same exact price, and these potentially get even better low frequency absorption, which is always the hardest, so that's why I chose them. And they're available at the isostore.com if you want to use them. And then those get placed into our 7/8 inch furring channel, which you can see here diagrammed in SketchUp. And we place those 24 inches on center across, and then these guys are 48 inches on center. And we just want to make sure that they have the right pattern so that it will hold up our nice ceiling perfectly. Sometimes we have to adjust the patterns to get around baffle boxes, things like this, which is another thing I will talk about. Our ceiling layers, same thing. We're doing the OSB and then the drywall underneath, as you can see here, and that's what we're doing. Insulation in all of our walls is mandatory, and also in our roof structure, we want to have that as well. Let me just show you real quick with the roof here, and we'll just take a look at that because the roof is really, really interesting and an important part of this design, and I've been doing this more and more. So we've got a nice 212 pitch roof, nice shallow. That was to code. Again, we had a minimum allowable distance here for the roof, and luckily that was allowed. Sometimes it's a 412 pitch, sometimes you might have a 612 pitch, but in this case we wanted to stay under that 12-foot marker and maximize our ceiling height. And so, if we look at this, we can take off the rake board on the side here, and I'm doing what's known as a hot roof design. Some people will call it an outsolation roof. And basically what happens here is that we have our plywood. So 3/4 inch plywood. This is going to be 1 inch of extruded polystyrene, or sorry, 2 inches of extruded polystyrene foam. And then we have, the 3/4 inch, plywood here again, and then our roofing material on top of that. And what this does is it provides insulation for this board, which is directly under inside the ceiling cavity, and it won't allow this board to have moisture due to temperature changes. And so I highly recommend, this has nothing to do with soundproofing other than the fact that it allows me to create a completely encapsulated roof and ceiling structure, which is really important because we don't have to vent anything here to code. So there's no venting in our soffits, and that means that sound will not come up into our ceiling. When you have air vents, you also have sound. So this is a design idea. The only other way to get around this to code and to do this right is to use spray foam, but I try to avoid spray foam, 1, because it's expensive, and 2, because it's not so great for the environment, and this is going to be a better approach, I think, overall. So I just wanted to explain that because that's kind of a unique part of this roof and why it's a pretty fat roof as well. So let's take that off and let's take a deep dive into the baffle box system, which a lot of you always have questions about. So this design is really cool where we put the ERV on the back here so the client can go around, open this, and they'll be able to, maintain the ERV easily without having a door that opens to the inside. So I just wanted to open that door and you'll see our ERV. This is the Life Breath 30. It's a great little ERV for small spaces like this. We use it when we have small areas and just, really needing to provide fresh air for 1 to 3 people, which is probably what's going to be happening in this space. We built this little storage closet specifically for the ERV, and this will allow him to change the filters easily. This is where the fresh air is going to come in, and then we built these little extensions for the stale air to come out over there. So the fresh air is going to come up into this baffle box. It's going to go through a series of turns. This black stuff is the EcoVerb insulation, and then it's going to come down through our vent right here and into our studio, providing fresh air to our client. Now we also are going to have a mini split right in that same area. And what's really cool about the mini splits, and let me see if I can do this right here. Oh, awesome. So our mini split is pretty much directly below that fresh air. And what's going to happen is the air is going to come in through the mini split at the top here, and then it's going to be pulled over the coils and pushed out into the room across here. And that's really great for ventilation so that we can just get that fresh air circulating. Now that fresh air is going to come here, he's going to inhale and then breathe out, and that exhale is going to come up through our return over here, and that is going to pull air out, and it's going to go across and then back into our ERV and then sent to the outside. So a really beautiful design. Like I said, I'm really proud of it. We had to do a little soffit here to get this ERV to work out just fine. But, when I'm looking at a blank canvas, I'm always thinking creatively to try to figure that out. And you can see in here, we've got our acoustic treatment as well. So I'm going to put all those in because it's kind of fun to see. We usually specify GIK acoustics unless the client wants custom stuff. And then we do a custom cloud panel by one of our designers here in Nashville who can ship these panels out all over the country for our clients if they desire to have it shipped to them. We've got some lights on the back, some GIK acoustics hangers that'll keep that about 4 inches off the ceiling, which is great, especially on this angle. It'll keep it angled and nice rather than using chains. And we just got some nice bass traps with the diffusion on the front here, space for the bass, and space for his desk and everything as well. We've got some specialty outlets so that he'll have a star grounded system in there, so he'll have really clean power, and the bass traps in the corners, which I always like to do, including a little bass trap underneath our ERV area right there. Many of you are going to notice that we have this big, beautiful soundproof window. These are custom windows that I do. I've done a bunch of videos on YouTube about how I build these, so definitely check those out. But essentially, we build these from scratch. So we are going to put in 1/2-inch tempered glass on the outside, 3/8-inch laminate glass on the inside. We build our hardwood like an oak frame from scratch here, wood trim. This is a putty pad to keep the frame from touching the drywall on the inside to help reduce vibrations and transfer into the room itself. So really cool design. And then we have just finished wood frame in there. And you can see we use a little bit of quarter round on the inside, some glazing tape around the window to attach it to both the quarter round and the outside trim. So that's a very high level overview of the window. It's obviously a lot more complicated, but that gives you a gist of how it works. And then we're using the IsoStore HDLF, which is their heaviest door, since this will be a single door for such a small space. Communicating door would be impractical. And not cost effective either. So I'm really excited for this door. They'll deliver the door to the job site, and then we will just use these putty pads to make sure that it is in fact decoupled from the rest of the frame. We like to couple so we actually, with a single wall like this, will attach the frame to the wood. And let me see if I can put this in here with the south wall and just show you guys a little bit about what's going on here. So we'll take that off. We'll take the outside and the drywall off, and you can actually see the crazy number of studs we have here because of the window and the doorway. The frame is being drilled into this wood, so it's held up, but we shim the door to keep it plumb, and any space that's in there, we're going to put putty pads around it. Then we have putty pads here. This could be putty pads, or it could be Baccarat and acoustic sealant. I like to use putty pads around the door just so that it's really got some mass, and it's a little better than acoustic sealant there, but you could do either. And that's kind of the same thing around here, because the main thing you don't want to do is have sound come in through around your door. Obviously the door will stop the sound from hitting it, but you could still get sound coming through around the door if you don't take care of the gaps made from potential shimming and things like that to get the door plumb. Whoo, you guys still with me here? This is a lot of information. Other than that, we're using, I think, 2x10 or 2x12 joists. That pretty much goes over the gist of most of this design here. A few other things I would note is that we are using, take off this roof again here, or the ceiling structure. So we are putting a plug up above here just to tie in our backlighting. You usually use Philips Hue, but you can use a cheaper brand if you like. And we also are notating blue outlets for the isolated ground receptacle. So we run a separate ground using a star grounding system, and then you have these outlets right here, which are the regular outlets, and this will mean you could plug in an amplifier, a keyboard, something like that, and you won't get a ground loop and you won't get electrical interference as easily. So, and then we got our nice desk here. I actually really like that that model that my designer used. And then we'll run Ethernet here. We'll run the blue. Again, this is for powering his desk setup, speakers, computer, everything like that on its own. Select ground, and this is for like charging your phone, something like that, plugging in a lamp. We just want to have them separated so that they're not on the same exact circuit and that they have separate grounds. And that's really the key with a lot of this audio stuff. Other than that, pretty simple setup. We didn't do any fancy, because it's so small, we didn't run any Ethernet through the walls, for audio over Ethernet, or run XLR cables in the walls. So that keeps it nice and simple there. Overall, I think this client's going to be super happy with just a clean, nice design in a beautiful little backyard studio that he will enjoy for years and years to come. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you have found this interesting and intriguing. I love sharing our projects with you, and let me know if you guys are liking this in the comments. This is kind of a new approach I've been doing on the channel, just showing the work that we're doing at the Soundproof Your Studio design firm with our high-end clients. So with that said, if you're on this journey and you're like, whoa, Wilson, everything you just showed me is way beyond anything I want to do myself, you might be a good candidate for working with us. If that's the case, I highly recommend signing up for a Soundproof Clarity Call with me. Just go to soundproofyourstudio.com and click on the I Want Some Plans button, and you will be able to set up a 30-minute Zoom call with me. If you're not ready for that, don't worry. I've got that other free resource for you. It is my soundproofing workshop, where I will go over how I build these studios and try to teach you way more in depth than what I do on these short YouTube videos. So I highly recommend checking that out at soundproofyourstudio.com/workshop. All right, everybody, I'm Wilson Harwood. I am a studio designer and acoustician based in Nashville, Tennessee, and I look forward to teaching you more about soundproofing and room acoustics next week.